Hello everyone. Today we welcome our special guest, Mr. Ravi Prasad, an alum of Carnegie Mellon and IIT Kanpur. He has an experience of around 40 years as an entrepreneur and consultant. He has done marvelous job in telecommunications sector and has also been rated as the second most influential leader in the world of Internet of Things. We welcome you, sir, from the whole Bloggers Alliance family, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, so I most gratefully thank you, Neha, and I thank Bloggers Alliance for giving me this opportunity to interact with your audience. And you had asked about uh, the influencers in the IoT Internet of Things. So, how these influencer ratings work is that they evaluate how frequently you're quoted in the press and on TV and on social media, and how many people read the articles in which you are mentioned, and how influential you are in determining future courses of action. So, if I write an article in Times of India, or I say on Doordarshan television that on artificial intelligence or quantum computing, the government of India should do A, B, C, D, E, and the government of India soon afterwards announces policies incorporating my recommendations A, B, C, D, and E, then that is a measure of one's influence according to these influencer algorithms. So these algorithms also measure how often you're quoted or mentioned on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook business pages, YouTube, etc. And since Doordarshan or Hindustan Times have viewerships in lakhs, these influencer algorithms of Analytica and other social media influencing evaluation ranking organizations like Analytica, so they give it a very heavy weightage if you're quoted in an article which is read by lakhs of viewers, or if you've written an article which is read by uh, thousands of viewers. So, about my journey, my contributions, so some of the recognitions that I've received are rated by Analytica of UK in 2015 as the 19th most influential individual in telecommunications in the world. And as you mentioned in the introduction, I was rated by the IoT community in 2020 as the second most influential thought leader in the world in IoT, Internet of Things. And again in 2020, Core Analytics rated me as the 12th most influential thought leader in the world in quantum computing. And also, I was 39th on the Cloud Global Power List for cloud computing, cloud security, cloud storage. And then by Analytica also ranked me as the 42nd most influential expert in IIoT, that is Industrial Internet of Things. And also I was included in Analytica's Hall of Fame for Industry 4.0, Smart Factory, and Digital Twins. And how I got to be on these influencer lists is I have been in the field of telecommunications and information technology and high technology for over 40 years. And I have four postgraduate degrees in different fields of engineering and science. One is a Master of Science degree in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon University in USA. I also have a Master of Engineering degree in metallurgical engineering and material science, also from Carnegie Mellon University in USA. And then I have a lead assessor diploma from the European Union ESPRI Bootstrap Institute for System and Software Quality Assessments. And I also have a master's degree from IIT Kanpur in physics. And then I also worked at the Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon University as a faculty member on projects sponsored by the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. And I've written a book, Mobile Phones and Public Health, Myths and Reality. So how I got onto these influencer lists is because I write frequently on technology policy issues in leading newspapers such as Times of India, Hindustan Times, Indian Express, Telegraph, Economic Times, Financial Express, Hindu Business Line, Business Standard, Realpolitik, Observer of Business and Politics. And then I'm also interviewed frequently on various television channels such as Doordarshan and Lok Sabha TV, Rajya Sabha TV of Parliament, CNBC, CNN, NDTV, India Today, NewsX TV, and India Ahead. And in 1987, I founded my high technology consultancy firm, and we do a lot of feasibility studies and project reports in the field of telecommunications, information technology, and nowadays other emerging areas such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, quantum computing, deep learning, big data analytics. And in 1987, I also founded a think tank on defense and security issues in South Asia, which forecasted defense technologies and methodologies, and we did a lot of artificial intelligence simulation of how warfare would evolve in the SARC region over the next few decades. So that has been my journey so far. Please go ahead and ask me whatever you want to ask about my experiences and what I have to say.
Sure, sir.
Yes,
Great, sir. It's
yeah.
really an impressive journey, and it is very good to hear all your contributions and all the efforts you have given.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, sir, as you also said that you have been rated as the 19th most influential individual in telecommunication by Analytica. So, we would love to know your more of the contributions in this area and how you reached to such great heights. So, anything you want to add on?
Well, I've already told you this, that basically I've been in this field for 40 years, and mostly I've been writing about policy issues in telecommunications. And because my articles, what I've written, have been widely quoted. So that's how Analytica rated me as the 19th most influential person in the world in telecommunications policy and forecasting technology trends as a thought leader. I'm not an original researcher in telecom, even though I have the educational background, but I've not really got any research work done in that field, but more of popularizing on the policy front what the governments should do in the fields of telecommunications, information technology, and various sectors.
Okay, great,
So,
sir.
yeah.
And sir, you have written several articles also in Times of India, Hindustan Times, Economic Times. So, what kind of topics you love to write, like telecommunication, and other than that, also you would love to know what else you write?
Well, basically, all types of technology policies. I write what the government of India should be doing, what incentives it should be offering, what the policy should be. So I've written on various technology issues, mainly starting right from my school days in the 1970s. I've been writing leading newspapers and journals, even as a school student. I used to write on electronics, then about computers when computers first came, computer hardware and software, microelectronics, what the policy should be. Some work on energy, and then I wrote on nuclear policies a lot. In fact, I've written extensively on nuclear issues, then also on other technological issues. And then I've been writing a lot on defense technologies because I'd founded this think tank on defense and security issues in South Asia. So I wrote about defense and security technologies and methodologies and how they should influence policies.
Great, sir.
So,
Very interesting. And sir,
yeah.
you also have around 40 years of experience as an entrepreneur. So our audience is mostly youngsters. So can you provide some of the tips and advice to our audience?
Oh, okay, certainly. I'd be most glad to. So, about advice to budding entrepreneurs, the most important thing is to ensure that you're in a growing industry and that you do not become obsolete. So, for instance, the artificial intelligence revolution of the last few weeks, it has put several professions at risk. And many of these professions are very highly qualified professionals, such as lawyers, accountants, journalists, many types of medical specializations, such as radiologists, computer programmers, translators, photographers. So many professions are now at risk of being obsolete. And for an entrepreneur or someone just embarking on a corporate career, to be a specialist versus a generalist has always been a very delicate balance. Should you be into general management, or should you specialize in finance or marketing or any of these? Now, the problem with being a generalist is that you will not be above average in the long run. Your performance over a long career will be about average. You won't be better than your peers. But a specialist will always be at risk when the circumstances change, the way they're changing so rapidly nowadays. So let me give you some examples. For instance, radiology for a long time was one of the most sought after medical specializations. Um, and they were the ones who commanded very high fees after doing their MDs in radiology. But in the last 2 years or so, you have this artificial intelligence deep learning technique called GANs, generative adversarial neural networks. And they can now diagnose cancers like brain cancers or breast cancers from MRIs and X rays much better than most highly trained MD radiologists. So that is one profession that is under threat. Then again, if you look at lawyers and chartered accountants, they've spent several years in getting their education and expertise, and they command very high fees. But now, artificial intelligence programs can now prepare legal briefs, and they can write contracts much better than most lawyers, and they can file your tax returns and all the generate the statutory reports for reporting to SEBI and your income tax and Ministry of Corporate Affairs much better than most CAs, chartered accountants, and company secretaries can. So those are professions which are under threat. Similarly, in computer programming, India has a very large number of coders who are doing the kind of low end coding or medium end coding. And now artificial intelligence can generate these types of codes much better and much quicker and at a much lower cost than human programmers can. So it's only the very high end of software engineering which will be left for human beings to do. But the brunt of the coding jobs that India is relying on are under threat. Another point I want to make is that threats to your industry can come from a totally different sector. For example, the competition to camera and film manufacturers, such as Polaroid, Kodak, and Fuji. The threat to them did not come from other camera manufacturers such as Nikon, but they came from smartphones having cameras. So the camera industry worldwide has gone through a lot of turmoil. And in fact, companies like Polaroid went bankrupt when they were just the world leaders 50 years ago. And similarly, like for instance, the music industry, the threats to the CD music um, came not from other music recording companies, but from streaming apps on smartphones. So the very big music companies, RCA, HMV, they all suffered very heavy losses because now everyone listens to Spotify on their smartphones. And other professions which are facing challenges are photographers are facing challenges from drones. Photographers are also facing challenges from some of the new artificial intelligence programs that have come out, which can generate excellent images. You can just give a text description of what you want an AI program to convey, and it will draw or generate a realistic looking photograph, like a photograph or a painting based on your verbal description of what you wanted to depict. And again, in advertising is being revolutionized. Many actors now be generated by artificially generated people. These are images of the people don't exist, but you can generate realistic looking films. Uh, Other areas are linguists, translators, interpreters. They are being threatened by these automated language translation programs. So just as threats to your industry can come from technological change and in fact from totally different sectors, like I gave the example of the camera industry being uh, under very severe threat from the smartphones. So similarly, solutions to problems in your sector can come from totally different fields outside your area of specialization. And one thing I found in my experience is in dealing with complex industrial problems is that most common sense beliefs are totally wrong. Uh, you really have to rely on proper engineering technology, mathematical technologies, proper business management technologies, operations research, game theory, to solve some of these complex problems. For instance, in the transport sector, the solutions to efficient logistics routing, site selection, hub and spoke, where you put your hub and spoke, how you route um, various transportation routes in airlines or shipping or roadways. In logistics, some of these solutions can come from the behavior of insects such as bees and ants. For instance, the way bees and ants select their sites is they select it at the very optimum location. And when the bees go out to search for pollen from the flowers, they find the most efficient route. So, if you are in logistics and you want to plan how to, let's say, if you're a courier service or trucking service, you can get a lot of insights from how bees and ants go around solving the most efficient routing problem. And similarly, for instance, in urban cities, you always have traffic congestion, traffic jams. Now, solutions to for urban planners, city planners, in routing traffic can again come from studying ants. Because if you observe ants traveling, they travel in a straight line, but they never bump into each other and they adjust their paths and their speeds. To make it optimal for the benefit of the entire ant community. So urban planners, traffic management planners can learn a lot from how ants will move around on the same type of map. If you put a map of, let's say, Delhi or Bombay, highly congested cities, and allow ants to move around, they'll find the most efficient route without traffic jams. And again, for instance, my specialization of telecommunications, I've spent 40 years designing networks, but now solutions to efficient design and rollout of telecom and internet networks can again come from studying fungi and ants. Funguses can actually find some of the most efficient ways of routing networks, the way a fungus goes and tries to find sources of food when you plant it in the soil. And if you superimpose a map of the country on the fungus, it can tell you how to find the most efficient rollout from, if say I'm going to put a telecom network in a state like Madhya Pradesh, I can just superimpose a fungus or an ant hive on the map and they will find the most efficient route for me. In fact, there is something called an antinet or an ant internet where the movement of data packets in the telecom network is modeled on how ants travel. So, for an entrepreneur or someone embarking on a career, I would say a good career strategy would be to develop competence in 3 or 4 different sectors and to have a very multidisciplinary mindset rather than putting all your eggs in one basket by being super specialized in one narrow sector. Um, as I said, like I spent 40 years in telecommunication, but now people have who were outside the telecom sector, people who were biologists, botanists, and specializing in insects, and they found that um, the ants can design a very efficient network much better than telecom experts can. So again, as I one of the things I found in my experience is I told you I had 4 postgraduate degrees in different fields, and I frequently found that what I learned in one field enabled me to solve very difficult problems in another field, for which what I learned in the second field didn't have the solutions. What I learned in field A gave me insights or gave me an approach which would be useful in solving problems in field B. For instance, like what I learned, let's say in materials processing, gave me insights into solving problems in designing electronic circuits. So sometimes the solutions and insights come from very different fields. You have to have a multidisciplinary mindset that you should know the basics of many different fields. And one rule of thumb is that whenever you meet someone new, you ask them what are the most important challenges in their field, what are the problems they are facing, and how they are going to solve it. So, for at least every different field, you should know what are the, let's say, the 3 to 5 most important uh, things about that field, which that field is facing, what are the problems being faced, and see if you can come up with that. So that's one thing to do, is that whenever you meet anyone new, you ask them what are the challenges they're facing, what are the problems that they have to overcome, and then see if something from your experience can help solve that problem, and also learn from them that tell them what problems you're facing, and how they can, their insights can help you. Then another thing, about businesses, it's important to keep in mind that failures just happen very, very suddenly and quickly. You could spend decades building up your businesses, but it can just fail catastrophically in just a few weeks. And you've seen that in the biggest companies in the world, the ones that were in the Fortune 500 20 years ago, many of them have gone bankrupt now within 20 years, because they just cannot adapt to change. The circumstances are changing so fast. So, and because dealing with changing circumstances, unknown circumstances, you have to be cautious not just about known unknowns, but also you have to be prepared to deal with unknown unknowns. You have to have the capacity to foresee threats, not just in your own sector, but from totally outside your sector, how your industry is being impacted by a lot of events for which you have no control over. The entrepreneur or the manager of today is facing very complex situations where they have incomplete information, and they have to take action um, on a situation with incomplete information, and a rapidly changing situation where even if you're implementing a solution, the circumstances are changing. So this is something that you have to change, is decision making under uncertainty, that you're even as you're implementing a solution, the problem itself is changing, the conditions are changing. Some of the threats, I would say, things like because of technology changes, cybercrime, identity theft, financial frauds, these will be major challenges. And cyber criminals and cyber attackers have an overwhelming billion-to-one advantage over the defenses of banks and financial institutions. And because of this pandemic and work from home, people are doing businesses with other people whom they do not know at all, um, with whom they have never met and whom they have no control over. Smart contracts, payment systems, authentication, authorization, verification become crucial, because you're interacting with consumers whom you don't know at all. So you have to ensure you get paid. You're having collaborators whom you have never met. You'll be working together in teams with people whom you have never met, and you have to know that they will deliver, that they will perform and do exactly what is they have promised to do. So this is going to be a big problem, is remote working, where you have to make sure that a person will deliver what he has promised to do. So you need these smart contracts. In Industry 4.0, you have smart contracts, blockchain, authentication mechanisms. Again, trust is becomes very important, because deep fakes and voice cloning, they enable people to convincingly impersonate your colleagues and clients, and thereby defraud you. And cryptocurrency is enabling tax evasion, money laundering, and such financial crimes. But on the other hand, there are also technologies, and some of these technologies, such as zero knowledge protocol proofs, they will enable these types of remote working, because they enable me to prove my identity without compromising one's own privacy. So, with zero knowledge protocol proofs, which are implemented in some of these cryptocurrencies, so I can prove to my bank that I'm the legitimate owner of a bank account without giving it my name, photo, fingerprints, my password, or biometrics, etc., because these can all be compromised. Someone can steal my password, someone can steal my biometrics, my fingerprints can be cloned using 3D printing. which is already happening, that high profile cameras like this, on a high profile camera, you can take my fingerprints from a high profile camera and do a 3D printing of my fingerprints, and then use it to with that 3D print, you can use it to impersonate my fingerprints on a document. So, but using some of these technologies, zero knowledge protocol proves I can prove that I really am whom I claim to be without giving it any information about myself. For instance, if you're logging into your bank, online banking, or your ATM, there are now technologies where instead of entering my password or my PIN, ATM PIN, which can be stolen by a keylogger or shoulder surfing, there are technologies now that I can prove to my bank that I know what my password is. It's in my brain, and without entering in my the keyword, my the password, I can prove that I know what my password is, and that will prove to my bank that I am whom I really claim to be. But then again, what happens is that the legal systems and the tax systems will have to be totally overhauled to deal with these coming situations of frauds and impersonation, because now you can no longer rely on photographs, videos, and biometrics as convincing proof of identity. So there are now these crypto technologies where I can prove to the government that I paid every single rupee of my taxes, but without telling the government who I am, what my name is, what my PAN number is, or what my total income is. But I can prove to them that I paid all my taxes. So your legal systems and financial systems, reporting systems, um, business processes have to be totally overhauled to take such situations into account, because the technologies are emerging which enable these. And again, because of the technological revolution of artificial intelligence, disinformation and misinformation will become rampant. Because of the deep fakes technologies, you will no longer be able to trust or believe whatever you see or read, whatever you see on a computer screen or a television screen or a smartphone screen can be manipulated. You really cannot implicitly trust what you see on the device unless you actually see it physically. So establishing trust and authenticity will be crucial, especially with people whom you have never met in person. And so young entrepreneurs will have to make optimal use of these technologies to establish trust and authenticity, use social media for publicity, brand building, and networking. So any further questions on this?
No, thank you so much for all this great information and advice.
Yeah,
It's really very
yeah,
important to know all this. And very
yeah,
truly said that multidisciplinary mindset is very important nowadays. And
yeah,
yes, the trust and authenticity is important. Plus, adapt to change. We should adapt to change also.
yeah,
And plus, a very beautiful example of the bee, ants, and fungus. That was very good. Thank you so much, sir.
yeah. Thank
Last question, if you want to share any interesting part of your story or your life, anything.
you. I can give an example from IIT Kanpur. There was this very famous professor called P.T. Narasimhan. He was a very distinguished chemist, and one day he told me that I was in the fourth year at that time. He told me, Ravi, I want you to sign up for this new course of mine, which is at the intersection of uh, uh, chemistry and quantum mechanics and mathematics, linear algebra, group theory. So I told him I know nothing about chemistry. He said, no, I want you to sign up for this course. And so fine, I signed up for the course. It was a very interesting multidisciplinary course, and I was pretty much topping the course until the first mid-semester exam came. And the first question in the exam was something that I was bore no resemblance to anything that had been taught in the course so far. I couldn't even understand the question, let alone answer the question. I couldn't even understand the question. So desperately, I tried various approaches, and you know what you call in Hindi tukka. So tukka mar liya, just putting this and writing that and all that. And then after the exam, I went to Professor P.T. Narasimhan and said, look, I've been doing really well in your course till now, but this question I could not even understand, let alone give the answer. So what is the correct answer? And he looked at me and said, I don't know. So I said, what do you mean you don't know? You're the professor, you've set the exam paper, and you're saying you don't know the answer to the question that you have set in the exam paper. And he said, look, I don't know, but nobody else in the world also knows the answer to this question. And then he explained to me that this was one of his very advanced research topics that he had been working on for several months, and he had got stuck in it. And so he set it as an exam paper, thinking that maybe one of the students would get a brilliant idea, and then he could use that idea or that approach could be fruitful in solving the problem. And he told me, like, because you don't know anything about this topic, uh, you would have a fresh mind. You would not, you would examine every possibility. And because I set it in an exam, you would assume that there is a solution and you try very hard to find such a solution. And he said, people with experience, like my PhD students, they know a lot about chemistry and they know how difficult this problem is. So they would not have the mental courage to try to find a solution. And because they already know so much, they would have a closed mind. Many kind of approaches they would not consider at all, because subconsciously, or they would say, oh, this approach will not work, so let me not try that. Or some approaches which might work, they would have not considered at all. So he said, I threw this as an exam uh, question, hoping that one of you would come out with an idea that would work. So this was a very great learning experience for me, that um, how to be creative under pressure, try to find solutions. And this gave me an insight into how to do things. Another example that I had was I was doing a project under CNR Rao. He's one of India's world's most famous scientists, and he's got the Bharat Ratna. Um, some years ago, he got the Bharat Ratna. So I was doing this research project under him, and my task was to grind up various salts and melt them rapidly. And according to the existing theory, they should come out as glasses and not as crystalline solids. But all the experiments I did, they came out as crystalline solids rather than as glasses, which is the opposite of the theory. So I went to him and said, look, uh, the experiments that you told me to do, my experiments are coming out the exact opposite of the theory. Now, you know what students do to get good grades in exams? They will manipulate the experimental results to conform to the textbook theory. But I went to him and said, look, my experiments are giving the opposite of what the established theory says. So he asked me, are you sure you're doing the experiments correctly? So I said, yeah, I'm doing the experiments exactly as you told me to. You can come and watch me do the experiments. So this person who, later won the Bharat Ratna and all that, he came, he observed me do the experiments, and the result was the same, opposite of the theory. So then he said, maybe you're onto something. Maybe your experiments are right and the theory is wrong. Maybe all the top scientists in the world are wrong. People who have been working on this for years, maybe their experiments are wrong, or maybe their theory is wrong. So he went back and then he studied this area for the next 4 or 5 years. And he actually came to the conclusion that the people who had written the research papers from Europe and USA and all, that they were wrong and that my experiments were right. So he came up with a new theory, a new explanation, explaining why the previous theories of all the American scientists and European scientists were wrong. So again, this had the courage to tell me that uh, just because a great expert has written something in a book doesn't necessarily mean it's right. You have to go back, examine the assumptions on which they wrote that theory. It just turned out that the theory written by the American experts was valid only under a very special set of circumstances, not universally valid. Under other circumstances, that theory was not valid. And that is what CNR Rao came to. So again, that was a very great learning experience to me, that if you have done an experiment and it's the opposite of the theory, check if the theory itself is flawed.
Wow, sir.
So that's yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing all your life journey. And we are very grateful to have you here today. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neha. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. Thank my gratitude to Bloggers Alliance and to you, Neha, for giving me this opportunity to interact with your viewers. I hope that what I said will be useful to your audience and to the young entrepreneurs and people just embarking on their careers.
Yes, sir. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, sir.